This video is about something I started last fall about updating our guest bathroom. And I started by going down and picking out some nice cherry to build all the new cabinets with. And this was the end of last summer I did this here. This is a cherry that I had sawn a couple years ago. I made a video about. And, I figured this would be a good start for the cabinet. So I just kind of brought it up and cut it down to pieces I could stack in the house. And as with all my projects, I like to stack the wood, even though it's been air dried. I stack it in next to my wood stove, and I like to leave it there for a couple months if I can before I start using it to make sure it's really nice and dry and all acclimated to the house and stuff. So here's the lumber I'm going to be using for the project here. And there it is. I have it stacked up in my living room there, right next to the wood stove. And that was a couple months back. And, it just kind of sat there. Now, this project was supposed to be done last year before the holidays, but somehow I never got around to completing it. So, this is just a couple days ago when I got ready to, get going on this project. So the wood's all really nice and dry. And this is the room. It needs a good updating. It's there's a big closet in there where we hang all our winter coats and stuff. The flooring on it's all pretty old and getting worn. Nice big mirror in there and a shower that's built in, a 48-inch shower. That's kind of got to stay. And some old cabinets that are really outdated and kind of getting all worn out. So I had promised my wife I'd do this a couple months back, but I never got around to it. So this is a start. And there's the built-in shower. I'm kind of stuck with that, even though I've replaced all the other fixtures with white. So that's something I have to work around with. But here I am just getting ready to start tearing everything apart and get going. So I ripped out the closet, and that did have a light hanging in the ceiling, but they just had a wire hanging down, so I redid all that a little later. And then there's a cabinet on the wall there that I had actually made from an old vanity from our bedroom years ago and put up on the wall here just for some extra storage. So I'm going to start by pulling that down. And all these are going to be, this cabinet and the vanity are actually going to be replaced with ones that are made out of the wild cherry that grew in the backyard. So just a couple of screws, and that came right down. I had some holes to patch up, and then there's a ceiling fan there that's really nasty. It's all cracked up. The fan works good, but the plastic housing is cracked, and the light's all burned from them having a larger bulb in there than they should have, so that's got to be dealt with. And I pulled off all the fixtures and everything, and had to go back and start patching the walls up there. You can see I just took some compound, patched it all up. And there's this big 3-foot by 6-foot mirror on the one wall there, and I just didn't want to mess with taking that down and take a chance of breaking it, so I just taped that off. And then the closet door had some wooden trim on both sides of it, and I decided I was going to remove that. So I just took out, I had this little DeWalt tool that I got basically it was for free last year. When I bought a drill, they gave me that, and I'm really glad I didn't pay anything for it because I think the Harbor Freight tools actually work a little better. This one's really only good with the DeWalt blades, which I'll show you a little bit later. But I had to cut out because everything, the flooring was put in later with all the underlayment and stuff, so I had to cut everything flush to get it removed. So I trimmed them off and just kind of pried everything apart, and it all left some nail holes and stuff that had to be patched up. So a couple coats of compound and some sanding fixed all that. But the biggest thing is just kind of tearing out all the moldings and trim and everything when you start a job like this. And then another couple hours spent just taping things off that I wanted to keep paint off of, because I'm actually a pretty messy painter. And so I'll tape everything off, and hopefully it's protected good enough I can't damage it. Now, I like using this Bear paint. I used to use Valspar paint, but I'm finding that I get a better coverage with this and very low VOCs. And you also need a good light when you're painting a white ceiling. So you can't really sand the ceiling or wash it or anything, so I just took the central vacuum and really went over it good to make sure there was no dust or anything on it. It's all textured and it's all in really excellent shape, so that was just a quick, easy cleanup. And this paint we had bought several months ago for the job that was supposed to start earlier, so just had to kind of mix everything up a little bit to make sure it was properly mixed here. And I really do like this Behr paint. It does cover, and the thing is, the very little odor to it. It's amazing. It's the only paint that my wife could actually tolerate anymore. So, that's a good thing. And I use this, and I actually run a HEPA filter at the same time, and there's basically no odor. And then it's time to start painting the ceiling. And painting a white ceiling white again is always a challenge to make sure you get it all covered. So you really do need a good light to shine on it and be able to see the coverage. And you get I think this is a 3/8 snap roller that I got, a pretty deep snap roller to make sure I could get in all the cracks on the texture. So it did soak up a lot of paint. This little tiny ceiling took about over half a gallon of paint. I was pretty much amazed. So these textured ceilings, you always have to plan on a little bit of extra paint when you're doing them. So being a small room, it does take time to go around, and I just went over the edges there just to make sure everything was covered good. And then once that was done and dried, I went back to that closet and just kind of cut out for an outlet box where that wire was hanging down through there. I didn't like that just coming down into a light, and decided I was going to put a different light up there with a automatic switch on the doors. So that was a 5-minute job, and that kind of cleaned everything up, and I think made it back to code a little bit. And then it was time to start on the walls. All the patching was done, and before I got ready to paint, I went back and I did a final sanding on everything just to break the glaze, just in case there, with any place it wouldn't stick. And got that all roughed up a little bit, sanded down, everything taped off, and ready to start just about ready to start the painting there. You can see kind of a mess now, but then the same thing, I went back after the sanding, and I went over it with the central vacuum a couple times just to make sure I had all the dust and everything off of it. And this is the mess you don't see out in the hall, all the junk. And then our guest rooms actually got everything from the closet and the old bathroom piled in there now. So, you do live with a mess when you start a project like this. Now, my wife had picked out and bought this paint a couple months ago for the room. We both like the color, actually. It's a blue that's called Bluebird. And it's a little darker. Well, we thought it was a little darker than what was in there, but you could see after, being mixed up and sitting a couple of months, it started separating again there. So had to go back and mix that up real good again. So I guess you're best off to buy paint right before you're going to use it. And that way it comes all mixed up good. But it doesn't take long to get everything, back to the way it was. So this is, like I said, it's called Bluebird, and we thought that it was just going to be like 1 or 2 shades darker than what was there, and it turns out that actually it's quite a bit darker. It does absorb light a lot more than the blue that we had on there. That one was a lot more reflective, but we really like it now. Now, I did have a problem with the edging because when they did the texture on the ceiling along the corners, they had all kind. There were like lumps of it, and it wasn't even, and there were spots where you had to get up under it and stuff. So I did struggle with trying to edge it out there, and I wound up using the small brush trying to do it right. But I still have a couple spots I have to go back and touch up where you just couldn't help but go over because of the way they had the ceiling done. So there it goes. I started in the corner, and it's always a pain in the neck to do a small room. It's a lot quicker to do a big room than something like this, but you take your time and it does get done. And there's another thing, the old light that's coming down next. I just left it hanging there to have some light so I could see while I was painting. So there you can start to see how the darkness of it compared to the old one. And actually it really did warm up the room a lot. The lot warmer color. The room seems to be a little bit smaller and darker now though, but we really like it, the end result, so that's all that really counts. It's one of those colors that you really can't use everywhere. This was really like the perfect spot to use it, I think. So this bare paint really does go on nice, and it was all, one coat, no problem, covered well, covered even where I patched it. I didn't have to go back and do a second coat, so I'm really impressed with the how good this stuff works. So going back and got the closet all painted there too, and there you can see I got I put up a LED light with a Wemo there, and I'm going to put an automatic switch on the door, and I got all the Rubbermaid stuff all washed up and back in the closet there, so that all looks like new again, and only made a couple scratches I had to touch up. And here's the flooring. That'll be the next video. My wife had purchased this also back the end of last summer, and it's one of those snap lock waterproof lifetime warranty flooring. So next video will be about installing that. So that's going to be a fun job too, and I also did get a kit for installing it, and I will say that a couple pieces of that kit were really necessary. Now it's time to start removing the vanity. Figured I'd leave that till last minute, so I got the doors off of that so I could get under there and start disconnecting plumbing and stuff. In the meantime, UPS came. I had this old cover on my ceiling fan I showed you, and I went on Amazon. The company that made the fan is out of business. It was a Fasco fan, and they no longer exist, and parts don't exist. So I went on Amazon.com and I just looked through until I found something that looked to be about the same size and stuff like that. You really don't get any dimensions or anything, and I ordered it. So 2 days later, it's sitting here, and it's from a company by the name of Brone. It's a readily available part that didn't cost too much. So this is my first look at it, and it looks like it's really close to the size, and it's a real nice little vent assembly. Just cheap plastic, but looks like it'll work. So I was able to just take the old light assembly out of there, and then it had to be mounted up in here to allow the grill to be mounted to the ceiling. And luckily the depth of it was identical, and also the opening for the light was really close. It was a little bit bigger in one direction, and it wasn't quite perfect, but there you can see. I figured I could easily get it to work in there, and there's those 4 corner holes in the old light there that I decided I was going to use them to mount it. So I got 4 small bolts, and you can see I put them in the corners there, and then I made some little nylon washers big enough to lock it in place, put some nuts on the back, and it actually fit perfect. Cleaned up the white part there, and the inside polished that up a little bit for more reflection, and it turned out to be a really an exact fit. I couldn't believe it. And it did update the fan without having to spend $100, and the old ones are really terrible to get out, so this really did save a lot of time and money. So it fit in there. It looks good. It looks a little more modern than that old one that was in there too, and for under $20 it really did do a good job. And now that it's easy to replace this cover or anything else, now that I've got part numbers from Brone, so that went in, worked good. So I'm real happy about being able to solve that problem. So that's back to finishing up getting the vanity out, and if you remember back a while ago, I did a video about replacing the old sink with that new Kohler sink there, and I just did that temporarily because we had company coming, and we had replaced the toilet too at the same time. So this was easy to pull out of there. Just plumbing was really easy to disconnect and pick out. Now the new vanity is going to have a cherry top that it fits in, so it's going to be a completely different vanity. And this old one, top was just kind of glued on there with silicone caulk and glued down and glued to the wall, so that's kind of a mess to clean up later, but I was able to pull that out of there. And then it was time to get the cabinet out, so a couple screws going into the studs there. And then it turned out that they had run the plumbing up inside of it after it was installed, so all the holes were drilled up through the cabinet there. So I had to take that DeWalt. I took that DeWalt saw to try to cut some little pieces out around there, so I could, pick things out and take it apart. And I tell you what, I was trying to use those Ryobi blades because I don't have any good DeWalt ones, and it's impossible to use them with this thing. The little lock thing that they put there just doesn't line up with the blades, and it makes it such a monster to use them. I tell you, my Harbor Freight little vibrator for $10 was much better than this thing. And those Ryobi blades work much better than the DeWalt blades, I find. So I got that cut out around the pipes here, able to wiggle it loose. And another thing they did is they put this vanity in before they put the underlayment and the linoleum down, so that turned into being another problem where I had to go back and patch that up. But I was able to get that out and then get in there and just cut that little piece of 1x2 out there also, so I could just pull this straight out. So luckily I wasn't trying to save it, and I did damage the back there some, but got it out, and time to just do some cleanup there. I just use that little dinky vacuum just to show you that I'm still using that, and the batteries are still great in it and everything, and it's one of those things we grab for a little mess and we love it. Still holds the charge good, and it doesn't hold a lot when you clean up, but it works. And then I found a couple pieces of plywood that were just a little bit thinner than the old underlayment and the linoleum were. So I cut them out to fit in that spot there. I had it cut out for the pipes and stuff to clear. And it turned out there was just a couple thousandths difference in the thickness. I couldn't find anything the exact same thickness, so I had some of this red rosin paper. I decided to build up layers of that underneath the plywood just to get it perfectly flush, because when you put down that laminate flooring, everything has to be flush or you're going to have some big problems with it, bowing and not lining up right and stuff. So luckily this old linoleum was actually a hard linoleum. It wasn't that soft cushion stuff, so that'll work out good. So I ended up putting in 7 layers to get an exact flush fit with the top of that plywood. So it took a while to get them laid in there flat and get them all cut around the pipes and stuff. But in the end, it was worth it because it's it's perfectly flat now. And I do want this new laminate to go underneath the new vanity, because I'm actually going to raise the vanity up just to make the flooring look a little bit bigger in the room and give the room a little bit bigger look. So I just went back and got the set in 7 layers of that, got that all trimmed up, and then went back with the 2 pieces of the plywood. I didn't have one the exact size, so I cut 2 and put them in place there, and they're basically a perfect fit and perfectly flush. So now it's time to just staple it down. I use those narrow crown staples for stuff like this. That's actually what they had put the original underlayment down with, and you can never put enough staples in, so I just threw a whole mess of them in to make sure nothing warps up later. And there it is, checking it, everything's perfectly flush. That's basically, I'm at the point now where I'm, just about ready to put the flooring down, and I'm gonna actually stop this video here. And this is just kind of the prep work before you can really do much on a room. And I did get the clean up and the painting and everything done. And, you know, luckily I got that light fixture there. I found a cover for it. And paint came out really nice. I'm real happy with that. And, you know, here's the lumber that's eventually going to be turned into the vanity and cabinets in there. So, you know, that'll be probably the third part of this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.